liberty. There is not, there cannot be, a state without religion. Take the freest states in the world, the United States of America or the Swiss Confederation, for instance, and see what an important part is played, in all official discourses, by divine providence, that supreme sanction of all states. But whenever a chief of state speaks of God, be he William I, the Nauto-Germanic emperor, or Grant, the President of the Great Republic, be sure that he is getting ready to shear once more his people flock. The French liberal and Voltairean bourgeoisie, driven by temperament to a positivism, not to say a materialism, singularly narrow and brutal, having become the governing class of the state by its triumph of 1830, had to give itself an official religion. It was not an easy thing. The bourgeoisie could not abruptly go back under the yoke of Roman Catholicism. Between it and the Church of Rome was an abyss of blood and hatred, and however practical and wise one becomes, it is never possible to repress a passion developed by history. Moreover, the French bourgeoisie would have covered itself with ridicule if it had gone back to the church to take part in the pious ceremonies of its worship, an essential condition of a meritorious and sincere conversion. Several attempted it, it is true, but their heroism was rewarded by no other result than a fruitless scandal. Finally, a return to Catholicism was impossible on account of the insolvable contradiction which separates the invariable politics of Rome from the development of the economical and political interests of the middle class. In this respect, Protestantism is much more advantageous. It is the bourgeois religion par excellence. It accords just as much liberty as is necessary to the bourgeois, and finds a way of reconciling celestial aspirations with the respect which terrestrial conditions demand. Consequently, it is especially in Protestant countries that commerce and industry have been developed. But it was impossible for the French bourgeoisie to become Protestant, to pass from one religion to another, unless it be done deliberately, as sometimes is the case of the Jews of Russia and Poland, who get baptized 3 or 4 times in order to receive each time the remuneration allowed them. To seriously change one's religion, a little faith is necessary. Now, in the exclusive positive heart of the French bourgeois, there is no room for faith. He professes the most profound indifference for all questions which touch neither his pocket first, nor his social vanity afterwards. He is as indifferent to Protestantism as to Catholicism. On the other hand, the French bourgeois could not go over to Protestantism without putting himself in conflict with the Catholic routine of the majority of French people, which would have been great imprudence on the part of a class pretending to govern the nation. There was still one way left, to return to the humanitarian and revolutionary religion of the 18th century. But that would have led too far. So the bourgeoisie was obliged, in order to sanction its new state, to create a new religion, which might be boldly proclaimed, without too much ridicule and scandal, by the whole bourgeois class. Thus was born doctrinaire deism. Others have told, much better than I could tell it, the story of the birth and development of this school, which had so decisive and, we may well add, so fatal an influence on the political, intellectual, and moral education of the bourgeois youth of France. It dates from Benjamin Constant and Madame de Staël. Its real founder was Royer Collard. Its apostles, Guizot, Cousin, Villemain, and many others. Its boldly avowed object was the reconciliation of revolution with reaction, or, to use the language of the school, of the principle of liberty with that of authority, and naturally to the advantage of the latter. This reconciliation signified, in politics, the taking away of popular liberty for the benefit of bourgeois rule, represented by the monarchical and constitutional state; in philosophy, the deliberate submission of free reason to the eternal principles of faith. We have only to deal here with the latter. We know that this philosophy was specially elaborated by M. Cousin, the father of French eclecticism, A superficial and pedantic talker, incapable of any original conception, of any idea peculiar to himself, but very strong on commonplace, which he confounded with common sense. This illustrious philosopher learnedly prepared, for the use of the studious youth of France, a metaphysical dish of his own making, the use of which, made compulsory in all schools of the state under the university, condemned several generations one after the other to a cerebral indigestion. Imagine a philosophical vinegar sauce of the most opposed systems, a mixture of fathers of the church, scholastic philosophers, Descartes and Pascal, Kant and Scotch psychologists, all this a superstructure on the divine and innate ideas of Plato, and covered up with a layer of Hegelian eminence, accompanied, of course, by an ignorance, as contemptuous as it is complete, of natural science, and proving just as 2 times 2 make 5, the existence of a personal God. End of God and the State by Mikhail Bakunin. Read by Carl Manchester, 2007.